Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. Today we are talking to Alan Samuel Cohen. Alan is a writer. He's written a couple of books. One is The Connection Challenge, and in those difficult tasks for PR pros. He's a PR guy who, from what I read, I went through all your stuff last night, and I was reading your media kit and some of the accolades, and I watched your TedX talk. Man, you're pretty interesting. You've got some good stories there, and I really enjoyed listening to your TED talk as well.
Thank you.
So tell me about that, because there's something about that TED talk that is unique.
Well, what's interesting too is that TED was done about 6 months ago. Wow. And it only went live about 3 weeks ago. And so for a while I was thinking, like, is this ever going to actually air? And I got pretty discouraged because then the pandemic hit, and I thought, well, for sure, it's just now people are just so distracted, it got lost. And so what was ironic is that the theme of the conference that I spoke at was about chaos. Mm-hmm. And so my take on it was how a sense of shared purpose can help us navigate through chaos. Little did I know that ultimately it would air during probably one of the most chaotic times that most of us have experienced in modern history. And so it was in some ways kind of a blessing that it took so long for it to be broadcast, because I feel like it was kind of the perfect time for it to air. So I guess, it's certainly a unique story that I share, because I'm probably the only person who can claim that they were literally one of the first people in North America to read Harry Potter and be involved in launching the books, because I really was the first publicity person in the United States to have anything to do with Harry Potter. But the story of just sort of giving birth to something that would ultimately become a phenomenon is something that I only started really talking about over the past 2 years or so. I was kind of keeping it quiet for a long time, just because I felt like, who am I to take any kind of credit for something that's become so huge? But somebody talked some sense into me and said, well, no, you were it's nice to be humble, but it's also nice occasionally to claim your piece of history. And so I definitely had a part in bringing something into the world.
Yeah, I like that your approach, the chaos, shared purpose in chaos. That really, I definitely would. If I'm thinking about it, that's what would be lacking in a lot of things in where we are in society, as a whole.
Yeah, I would say in business. So in the story that I shared was just how chaotic what we had to do was in terms of launching a book like that with scarce resources, and what ultimately that was the chaos, but ultimately how we transcended was by getting aligned around something that's so significant to be able to get young boys to read who weren't really reading. And But I think what we're seeing today, and maybe at the time that this is airing, this will still be going on. In terms of the pandemic and the chaos that we're seeing, we're also seeing people coming together in profound ways to help navigate through it. And I'm so moved by some of the stories that I'm hearing about people providing meals for the homeless, or making or supporting doctors and first responders. And I just read somewhere about a nonprofit that's giving meals to backpacks that are filled with meals to people who are out of shelters. And it's amazing how people are coming together to help those most in need right now. So
yeah, that's definitely one of the things that the United States is not bad at doing. They're really good at coming together and pulling their resources when they need to. It sucks that it takes this to ignite that, when it's okay, we're capable of it. Let's just continue it, because the climate feels a hell of a lot better now of what we're watching than it did prior to that. It felt like we were getting.
I live in Manhattan, only a few miles away from the World Trade Center, and I saw the second plane hit, and when I remember how New Yorkers were right after that happened, it was incredible to be here, and as scary as it was, neighbor to neighbor, people really supporting each other. And it took a while before things sort of went back to some of the less desirable behaviors, the xenophobia and and the competition and all of that. But for a while, New York really showed the best of itself.
Yeah, we just got to figure out a way to okay, well, we don't have to do this every 10 years. We can exactly. we can just continue it. If it feels good now, if you continue it, it's going to continue to feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
A lot of the stuff that I've read, you talk a lot about connection being important in that shared purpose, because in order to find a shared purpose, you have to have a connection with that purpose, correct?
Exactly. I see connection in three different ways. It's connection to yourself, and then it's connection to others, and then it's connection to some greater purpose, which is bigger than yourself or bigger than that connection that you have to that one other person. So when all of those pieces align, it's like a three-legged stool that where from the base you can really excel. And so I'm an expert in human connection, but purpose is driven by humans. And so I worked in communications for over 20 years before becoming a coach that helps teams connect better, and executives to connect better to their teams and to purpose. And so I'm all about that. And what I think is so profoundly interesting right now in this time where we're socially distancing, where so many of us are being told basically that what we're wired for, which is to connect, where we can't do, and we're isolated, but a lot of that isolation can actually cause depression and anxiety, which impairs our immune system, which makes us more susceptible to a virus. So it is kind of it's a little mind-blowing, but the unique circumstances that we're in right now. Mm-hmm. And so connection doesn't become less important right now, it actually becomes more important. And so how we figure out how to connect better in this moment in time is so important. And hopefully it will be carried forward long after this pandemic is just a piece of our history.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're seeing it all over the place with Zoom. I've been having family meetings now, every Saturday on my Zoom account. with about 5 or 6 members. You're seeing people posted all over the place, their meetings that they're having or their different ways that they're finding to connect with people. So
absolutely. People are doing a lot of the things that they could have been doing before, calling, checking in on their elderly parents, reaching out to their family members and to their friends and to their coworkers and people that they haven't heard from in a while. It's suddenly what should be so natural but isn't, is becoming more of a norm, and I think it's fantastic. I think we have to be concerned about Zoomitis. I call it Zoomitis. It's too much Zoom. We have to find some different means of connecting. It could be just old school picking up the phone or texting or sending snail mail if that's an option. But finding some creative ways to stay connected in a pandemic.
For sure. Have you ever listened to Johan Hari?
I have not.
Okay, he talks about connection, and his the only reason I know about him is because I suffered from addiction, and he talks about addiction, in a different take. So he says that the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yes, and I see that in many ways. There's a great TED talk on that. I thought that there's a guy named Gabor something, or I think he's talks about that as well. But but I've struggled with drug addiction and alcoholism. Been clean for 15 years, but as somebody who also suffers from anxiety and depression, my tendency is to isolate more when I'm feeling triggered or feeling those urges, and I know that I need to push through that and double down on connection when I'm feeling. It's one thing to find some space for yourself. It's another thing to isolate. So I need to push through that a lot of times and reach out for help. And as men, I think sometimes that's hard. I think we deal with a lot of shame and like we should have our shit together and all that. But I work on trying to stay even more connected when I'm feeling most vulnerable.
Yeah, I think for myself, I use this podcast to, because I'm connecting with people all the time, but it's not, I'm telling my story, so bits and pieces of it will come out during a conversation, but it's not really connecting. I'm hiding behind the microphone and the fact that it's my show and I can control it. So you know what I mean? It's there. Yeah. My brain is playing tricks on me. Yeah, we all have that.
Yeah. I have I started a Facebook group called the EQ Advantage for coaches, male coaches and consultants and solopreneurs, and just as a safe space for men to build their emotional intelligence, to reach out for help, to show vulnerability, to not be dicks. That's the rule, the main rule of the group. Just because I think that guys need some practice in how to be real, and feel safe to express themselves, and get feedback and in a supportive space, not a kind of alpha,
not a Twitterverse.
Yeah, right. The cruel world of social media.
Yeah,
trying to create a gentler reality. The EQ Advantage, it's called.
That's awesome, man. I was thinking about at some point, like I wanted to have a men's group, where you get a group of guys together online, virtually, however you want to do it. Yeah. But just talk about, just men's issues.
Come hang out with us.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
Right on. Cool. You have to shoot me a link to that. But that actually, your emotional intelligence and what you're talking about is leading into another one of the questions that I had for you. And how nowadays, with, the different people that you come across in business, and if you're a manager, or in my case, I was a superintendent at one point. I'm in construction, so I was a superintendent, and I was also foreman, general foreman, all the top positions. But in a leadership role in any industry or sector of our economy, you have to it's almost a must, if you're going to be successful, to know emotional intelligence, right?
Yeah. And I think that there are a lot of people who think that they understand what emotional intelligence is, and they understand a piece of it. They don't necessarily understand the how broad a study it is. So I use emotional intelligence in all of my work with individuals as well as teams, and so it's considered to be, it's a set of skills. It's considered to be even more telling about a leader's ability and potential than IQ or job skill. It is really how we understand our own emotions and how we manage those emotions, as well as how we understand other people's emotions and how we can adapt to situations that call into play our emotions. So everything from how we manage our stress, to how flexible we are, to our decision making, to our relationship to what's going on, rather than sort of dismissing or pushing down emotions. It's actually to recognize what we're really feeling and then use that as a guidepost to how we want to how we want to interact. And I think that, most of the work I do is with men, but men are particularly challenged to be able to label what they're feeling. And, before I did all of this work on myself, it used to be, it's like I'm pissed off or I'm angry. Those are the two emotions. There's, but in fact, there are thousands of emotions. And the more we're able to identify what we're really feeling, that can become a roadmap for where we want to go and so understanding our emotions is so incredibly important for leaders. There have been studies that more emotionally intelligent leaders are more successful. Period. End of sentence. So that's the work that I do, and helping them leaders build empathy, build resilience, all of those things that maybe people thought for a long time were soft skills, but if they are soft skills, they're hard to implement. And so we work on that.
Yeah, I like that. I've always thought about emotional intelligence, and the way I think about emotional intelligence is we deal with a lot of different people, like I said, but a lot of these people come from different backgrounds. All right.
Yeah.
And so being in the blue collar side of work, you're in the white collar side, I'm in the blue collar side. The people that came before me, the journeymen that were, that I was an apprentice under, and, in that old guard, I guess you would call it, they're very gruff. All right. The way they deal with people, the way they deal with apprentices, and how they manage was very not PC, I guess you would say, just like almost like tough love, They're just, hey, suck it up, kid, get, hey, helper, get over here, right. And right. What you're finding now, and what I was finding, is that you can't, there's no cookie cutter way of dealing with people. Okay. Right. Now, all right. You can't talk to people however you want. You have to really understand your personnel and know them and how to manage them, whether it's emotionally, because this guy over here, he grew up in a household where he's yelled at all the time. So right. You're yelling at him, and you're right. He's shutting down, and you're not getting any production out of him at all.
Right.
And so identifying these people and putting them in a place to succeed instead of fail. You know what I mean? So knowing your personnel, knowing their emotional intelligence, knowing, maybe what they came through. And some of that comes just simply from talking to them and getting to know them as,
asking questions.
Yeah. And finding out about that. And so,
there's some people who are more logically oriented. There's some people more emotionally oriented. But to discount the emotional life of anyone is to miss out on an opportunity to connect at a deeper level. So even that guy who is kind of a blowhard or overly directive, micromanages, or sort of bullying, like there's still an emotion. There's an emotion underneath that's pushing out some of that behavior. And so if the guy or gal is willing to do that work, they may find that they actually get even better results if they are more relatable and if they're able to adapt or adjust their behavior in order to meet other people where they need to be met. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I agree. I was going through your media kit, and so there's some key words that kept popping up throughout all of your stuff, and commitment, accountability, awareness, empathy, assertiveness, mindset, and emotional intelligence. So if you had somebody that possessed all of those, what would you have?
If you had somebody who was all of those things?
Yeah, who possessed a little bit of all of that, what would you have?
Well, you'd have a Superman, right? So I don't think that I think all of us have all of that within us. I think that we're more connected to certain aspects of that at certain times than others. Right now, it's like if you rate yourself 1 to 10 in all of those areas, like I'm probably averaging out a 7.
Yeah.
Right? Like high commitment, high empathy, but probably lower accountability. So it's all of these things relate to emotional intelligence. And you could put all of those underneath it. And it's fluid. It's some days I'm more accountable than other days. Some days I'm more committed than other days. Some days I'm more emotionally aware and more emotionally expressive than I am in other moments. So right now I'm giving myself a 7 as an average, but there's certain things that I'm certainly sucking at. Like in emotional intelligence land, we talk about impulse control. So, impulse control is like being more measured about what you say and what you do and what you write, what you post on Facebook. And I mean, there are days where I'm like a 1, where I'm just like spitting stuff out. I'm just not thinking through the impact of what I say. I'm saying yes when I want to say no. I'm saying no when I want to say yes. And so like today I'm kind of, I guess I'm being pretty measured. But that's something that I work on. I've worked on with my coach all the time. So now I'm probably around an 8. It's like I'm thinking things through a little bit more. I'm not blurting things out. I'm not being quite so impulsive. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's the.
No, what all of those attributes are characteristics of a good leader. Somebody who can understand what's going on, can find shared purpose amongst chaos, can rally people together, get people behind you, because they know you're not going to steer them wrong. It's just that's what I would think of as a good leader and the qualities that they would have.
Well, and I think right now in what we're looking for in the world, maybe we've been looking for that for a long time, is a kind of adaptive leadership, which is to know what people need. Do they need more empathy right now, or do they need more direction and accountability? What's needed in the moment? Do people need to be more micromanaged and given more structure, or do they need more autonomy? And so being really responsive to what the needs are of your people, that sort of servant leadership. And you could be a leader just in your community or in your family, right? What's needed? What's going to get the greatest result, and what's going to be the best for the relationship long term? What's needed of me? But in order to do that, it's got to start first with me. Like I have to be self-aware. I have to manage my own mindset. Self-leadership is important, because I have no business trying to lead other people if I'm not first and foremost checking in with who am I and who do I want to be right now. We're seeing great examples of leadership right now in the world, and we're seeing some really horrible examples. And I like looking at it and saying, okay, I want to take that part, I want to take that from our governor, and I want to take that part from that spiritual leader, and that senator, I'm not digging how they're showing up. So
yeah, kind of like what you would think that we would be doing in our system, the system that we live in. We live in a capitalist society or capitalist system, but we all know that of all of the systems that have been tried out through time, through different civilizations, you got Marxism, there's probably some decent things in there that could be useful. There's some decent things in Stalinism, communism, capitalism, socialism. All of these have traits that work, or parts of their system that work.
Right.
And
what happens is that people get so dug in, and then things become so black and white.
Yeah.
And then labels and identity politics. And I think when all that happens, I think we lose some of the really, ideologies are all well and good, but I think sometimes they close us off to seeing possibility from people who maybe don't seem to share all of our ideology. But also open-minding is hard. And my first book was on difficult conversations, and I sometimes I feel like a total fraud, because when somebody shows up who has very, very different opinions from me, and I can still find myself getting very triggered, political discussions, ideological discussions. So I continue to work at that, to just try to lean into those conversations and with empathy, and not make the other person wrong just because they don't see everything the way that I do. Just listen for where there is agreement. And it seems it's gotten harder in a very divisive, politically charged world, but I remain the optimist that there's going to be this kind of reset, and that we're going to find our way a little more to a middle ground, I hope.
Well, yeah, with from 2019 all the way into 2020 to where we are right now, you're having no choice but to actually watch all of this kind of. It's all unfolding right in front of us. And there's not a whole lot of smoke and mirrors, how there usually is. You know what I mean? Where you we're going, this seems weird. No, it is weird. It is, some of this, the DNC stuff that's been going on, and it was happening in 2016, but no one's really paying attention to it, because that identity politics was causing people to be blind to some of the stuff that was happening blatantly right in front of us. But now, there's things that are coming to light that we can't ignore. Joe Rogan just had that episode with the guy who wrote the book on Charles Manson. and how MK Ultra and all of that, and the CIA, what they were doing and how they were experimenting with that. I mean, it's a real thing, you know?
It's hard I do find that it's hard sometimes to distill, like, what's true sort of lowercase t, what's true uppercase T, what's conspiracy theory, what's just a different way of looking at things. And, it can kind of, it can make you a little nuts.
Yeah.
Trying to find really objective news and all of that. So
I don't watch CNN, NBC, MSNBC. I don't watch anything mainstream. The only thing that I really I'll follow some investigative journalists that I like, and what they're reporting. But this one was like, it was hard to refute what he's saying because he's got a lot of stuff to back it up. Right. It wasn't like conspiracy theory things, and we know that word gets thrown out there just to discredit and get people to go, oh, that's one of those again, huh? Right. And it's the natural reaction from that word. But
we have to agree there are some conspiracy theories out there.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, like the 5G and the coronavirus. Yeah, that's whatever. It's. I'm not an expert on any of these things, so I can't give an expert opinion. I can just give you sort of an armchair quarterback, lame ass, nobody from Northern California guy giving his opinion.
Well, the true wisdom is knowing what you don't know, or admitting that you don't know, or it's like people who, it's usually people of lower intellect. Or lower awareness who think they know everything. Oh, yeah. It's like the truly like smart, wise people are like, I have no idea.
Yeah,
like, it's like that's beyond my grasp or my awareness right now in this moment.
Always don't be married to anything.
Exactly.
Because there's even how long we've been on this earth keeps changing.
Yeah.
The more they find, the older the artifacts that they dig up, they're dating it way past what they thought.
Yeah. Well, that's just a growth mindset, right? Is to constantly be curious and be open to a new way of looking at things. And, but also like being that way it alleviates a lot of the stress.
Yeah.
It's a more definitely. Fluid way of living.
Yeah. Well, there's no, you're not constantly trying to, convince people of your idea, it's right. Like, oh no, you have to think this way,
right? Right. Well, it's I don't know if you've read any of the Harville Hendricks. There's a lot of marriage counseling, marriage coaching. He says like the reason why we sometimes get so attached, like to like our beliefs become so entrenched and so ingrained, and then when somebody comes along and challenges that, it's literally like you have to cling to it because you feel like if you let it go, like this part of you is actually like a part of you has been a lie. Or it's like killing off. It's like killing off one of your babies. It's just the more we are open to hearing other people's views, like really from a space of just empathy, just curiosity, the more they're likely to listen to yours. But if you immediately sort of push back, it's like, no, that's wrong. That's not like, where are you getting that from? Like why would anybody be open to hearing anything that you have to say?
Yeah.
So it's fascinating, the human behaviors around
just
being double down.
Just being a human in general, and why we do half of the things we do is kind of crazy.
We're all nuts.
Yeah, most of it's determined through biology though, and that need to procreate, and that shit gets you in a lot of trouble.
That's why I just have a dog.
Yeah, right. I'm a 5-time failure in relationships. So I mean, I just got out of my 5th long term.
That means you're a 5-time winner at being independent.
Hey, that's a great way to look at it.
We call that a reframe. That's a classic reframe.
It sure is. Jesus, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put that on my license plate now.
Would you?
On my rim around it. So do you want to talk about any of the books that you got? I know you talked a little bit about the PR, Hard Talks for PR Pros. What was your latest one? Because
I've only written 2. All right. So I know it made it seem like I'm Stephen King with my whole volume.
You've written more than I have.
Well, I think the first book is interesting and from a human study, because I wrote that book on difficult conversations as a public relations person. What I realized is that PR people are really good at spinning the truth and not, well, we know that, right? That's what they get paid for. But when it comes to like just having honest, vulnerable conversations with people on their team or clients or colleagues, that there's a lot of PR people are very reticent. And I know that I was that person. And a lot of that is just because I suffer from the disease of people pleasing, which largely fueled my alcoholism and addiction. And I still find in certain moments, I'm not completely honest. I am afraid to tell people how I really feel because I don't want to hurt people, or because sometimes it's more like I'm just trying to control how people see me by putting like a veneer over what I'm really feeling. And so, I wrote that book 7-8 years ago, and just because I wanted, a lot of ways, wanted to teach other people, and I wanted to break free of my own habits around that. But even as a younger man, as a teenager, I used to constantly conceal the truth of what I was doing or how I was feeling, and kind of being sort of sneaky and shady. And so today I do my best to walk more on the light and help others to be more vulnerable by sharing the truth of how they're feeling, and be willing to risk the consequences that some people may not dig you, and they may I don't want to say reject you. They just may just not want to be in a relationship with you, and that's okay, because we're not meant to be in relationships with everyone. And and that's true in the second book, which is on connection. Like, we don't need to connect with everyone. We need to connect with our soul. We need to connect with the best of who we are, and then attract the people who we're meant to have in our lives. So the sort of theme of connection is run through all of my books, all of my work. And emotional intelligence is very much about connecting with self in order to connect with others. And I don't know what the next book is. I don't know. Connecting through pandemic. I don't know.
Yeah,
writing is hard. I don't know. I don't envision another book too soon.
Yeah, well, getting started writing is hard too, because that's the point where I'm at.
Yeah, I come from a family of writers too, so I had a lot of that kind of comparison thing going on in my head. Like, my father's a professional writer, as is my sister and brother, and who am I to think that I can write as well as they? Yeah. So I didn't for a long time, and ultimately I was like, screw it. I got something to say. I'm not going to hold back.
Yeah. Well, hey, at least you got something. I
got some legacy. I got something.
Mine's coming. It'll be there eventually.
It'll be there.
As long as
it's in you.
Yeah, it's gotta quit making the excuses. Got a lot of those. I'm really good at that.
Yeah, a lot of us are. A lot of us are. Right? And the resistance will kick up even stronger as you get closer to that thing.
Oh yeah,
it's you got to break through.
Well, thanks. I got something to look forward to. All right. So you want to go ahead and plug anything? We're going to wrap this up. I got another one to run right into. So for the fellows out there, especially male leaders,
guys who are coaches or consultants, come, if you're on Facebook, check out the EQ Advantage. We'd love to have you come and join the group. And then my TED Talk, I invite everybody to check it out. It's called The Magical Power of Shared Purpose, where I get real behind the scenes of the making of the Harry Potter books and the power of purpose. And for all other information, you can go to my website at alansamuelcohen.com.
And all that stuff will be available in the show notes, and everything that you put there, and you'll be able to just go there and find you. So it'll make it easy. Well, I want to thank you for spending a little bit of your time with me today and getting to know you a little bit better and your message.
Thank you.
And good luck to you. I hope you do well, and I will be getting this back to you as soon as I publish it.
Awesome. And stay well.
Yes, you too.
Thanks.
All right, brother.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved. To connect to the show, book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up. On Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. On Twitter at But Up Now. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast. See you next time.